the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. He is Josh Mansfield. It is Tuesday, October 10th, and the USDGC and Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championships are in the books. Kyle Klein wins USDGC 2 years after losing in a playoff to Paul Macbeth at Winthrop. And so he gets his first career major victory, truly cementing himself as a premier up-and-coming young talent. Not that he didn't already have those plaudits, but this definitely puts him in the category up there with Gannon Buhr if he wasn't already there. And over on Throw Pink, Holyn Handley gets the victory, and it was very dramatic in FPO, and we will talk about that, and we're also going to be talking to Holyn Handley in a little bit. Josh, we just watched the worst USDGC in the last 10 years and the best Throw Pink that has happened since it started. I'm just coming out with that take right off the top, and I'm curious for your thoughts.
Man, I wouldn't even call it a hot take at this point. It's right. The final round for MPO, Kyle came in with a 3-stroke lead. Nobody played particularly well. There's nothing super compelling about it, and the bigger problem is it wasn't, remember in previous years, like Ricky last year, he had the first 2 amazing rounds and then the blow up in round 3. There wasn't really a lot of players like that this year. There were your group of guys who you expected to play well, played terrible in the first 2 rounds and were nowhere to be seen, and then you have your lead card who stays the same lead card for like 3 rounds in a row, but they start playing
despite limping.
Yeah.
We were talking in the reacts after round 3. Joel Freeman shoots a 2 over and is still on the lead card. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, man. So many things contributed to this being the worst USDGC. As far as I can remember, it's odd that it comes at the time and the same tournament on the flip side where the Throw Pink was so good.
Very compelling. But today we're going to celebrate Kyle Klein a little bit as he earned it. I mean, he truly did play well. Like he was the one guy in the field who really played well. And, if you want to scrutinize his final back 9, you can, but the thing is he played knowing that he had a massive lead, and therefore, some of the errors were just acceptable mistakes. Obviously you're not trying to go into the hazard or go out of bounds down the stretch at all. Those were errors, but it didn't matter, right? He's still laying up. Yeah, he won by 1 stroke, but he's laying up even after going out of bounds. So he afforded himself the opportunity to make mistakes down the stretch because he went out and played incredible in the front and, opens up a 9-shot lead and has Bradley Williams playing for second.
Yes.
With, 7-8 holes to play.
And noteworthy, Bradley Williams secures second by 3 strokes. And it was Isaac Robinson who came into the day at 13th. Who managed to round out the podium with Simon. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of guys, a lot of our top players showed up big in the final, maybe round 3, round 4. But, I think I forget who posted this. Maybe Mahmoud Barani, the producer at DGN, posted, I've never seen a leaderboard more, sort of falsely showing what happened at a tournament.
That's great.
You're looking at Isaac in 3rd and Calvin a stroke behind him, and those guys were literally never in the conversation at any point. They were never involved, and good for them. They played up to the point where they were able to take home a nice paycheck, but they were not part of the conversation. And Kyle Klein was the only guy who played at the level that we saw multiple people play at last year. So I'm really still a little bit baffled as to why the level of play in MPO was as low as it was. It was just not, and we had the windy round, but the other 3 rounds was gorgeous.
Right.
I have a hard time understanding it, and the course didn't change almost at all. So we talked about this on the Reacts. We got one email, and the theory that was espoused in this email was, well, they had too long of a layoff, and so like they were rusty because they were a little cold because they didn't play when U.S. Women's was happening. So it was like 2 weekends off between MVP Open and USDGC. I guess, but like it's not like these players don't play; they go and practice. So just really strange year.
Like you talk about that windy round, the rest of the 3 rounds were better than last year's weather. And Kyle Klein is 6 strokes behind Gannon's winning mark from last season. And
although I would argue they played comparably, if you like take away some of the blow up strokes at the end.
Okay, that's a fair point, right? Because if you add some of those strokes back, it's different when you have Nicholas Ontala chasing you down, right? And for Gannon and pushing you to keep the pace, whereas Kyle didn't have to do that. So I think that's a fair point. But it's the surrounding around Kyle,
yes, right,
is the reason why he doesn't get to the 33, because he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to get anywhere near it, and is still able to win pretty comfortably. I know we talked about it on the Rapid Reacts. It really is truly baffling why the rest of the field just no-showed this hard. And people, I saw someone mention both in the email as well as in the Discord, is it fatigue from the very tail end heavy side of the season? But that's pretty common for the tour. I mean, you often have a lot of your events coming right at the end of the season and the important ones. So it was weird, but I think that point that you made from Mahmoud was such a good one about the fact that the leaderboard just very falsely displays what happens. I don't know if we saw Isaac or Calvin on coverage this weekend.
Yeah, there was a little Calvin here and there, but to be honest, and I didn't sit and watch MPO all the time because I was out of the course, but I saw almost no Isaac.
Yeah, just very few from either of those guys, and Isaac's on the podium. Simon is really Simon played pretty well. He had a bad first round, but stepped it up, and he was the one who we really felt like was in contention, but his 7 down wasn't enough and wasn't going to be enough, so it's a weird tournament. It was a weird tournament.
Let's give the man some credit, though. This is Simon's first podium since 2018 Konopishte at a major. Which, I think is a great sign for him. We can talk about his struggles at the majors historically, and it did feel like he had opportunities. I mean, it felt like so many of these players had opportunities to do something. It was like at one point during round 3, I posted the meme in the Discord chat of like the guy with the stick that says, "Come on, do something." It was like, can anybody take control of this tournament? But ultimately it was Kyle. And, he comes in with a 3-shot lead and says, "All right, see ya." He has like the super nervy putt on the first hole, terrible miss. And then was just lights out until it was a wide enough margin that it no longer mattered.
Yep.
So that's his 4th straight top 10 at USDGC. He has 3 top 10s at the majors this year. Let's just lay it out here. I mean, I think Kyle Klein, with this win, is not going to win Player of the Year, of course, but he is like a top 5 player this season now, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that. Remember, he misses a big stretch. Plays terribly at DMC.
Yeah, he was dealing with the back injury.
Doesn't play DDO, doesn't play Preserve. And that was, like you said, that during that back injury. And so when you look at the Pro Tour standings, there's 2 things that are kind of a little bit misleading. Number 1, so he's sitting in 8th right now. 1, he's got that month off for injury. And number 2 is USDGC points don't count towards your Pro Tour standing points.
Sure.
So both of those things, I think, undervalue Kyle where he should be in the standings.
But run the list down for me real quick from 1 to 8.
Sure. Okay, so you got Calvin
obviously
number 1.
Calvin and Isaac outplayed him this year.
Yep. You got Gannon at number 3. Gannon's got 3 wins.
He's like, yeah. It's borderline for me with Gannon and Kyle right now.
Because
okay,
Kyle's got 2 wins, one of which is USDGC.
Sure.
Okay. Then you got Ricky. Ricky so he's in 4th.
Ricky got all the way to 4th. Man.
Yeah.
Good on him.
Ricky with the win at Preserve and a silver, but that's it for Rick. You got Eagle in 5th. Eagle, no wins, and that's a stat.
Eagle's been playing super good the last couple months, though.
He has. He's playing really well, but just can't get the one. I mean, lots of podiums.
Yeah, I feel like having USDGC in your pocket, like I take Kyle's season over some of these guys.
Ready for a crazy stat? I mean, Eagle doesn't play. He didn't play Ledgestone, or Idlewild, but he hasn't missed the podium since European Open, and he hasn't missed top 5 since OTB.
Wow.
So sneaky good season. Matty,
he's like the Calvin Heimberg that nobody's talking about, you know?
Right. Just because he misses some tournaments, honestly. Matty O is in the 6th spot. Simon in the 7.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I take Kyle's season over Matteo and Ricky.
Mm-hmm. And
then,
Simon?
Close.
Why not Simon?
I don't know, because does he have 2 wins this year or just 1?
Simon's only got the Music City win.
Only the Music City?
Oh, that's not true. He won D-Glow. Okay.
Thank you. I thought he had 2.
Yep, you're right. I still give it to Kyle. It's a major.
That's fair, but it's like close. And I feel like Simon's level of consistency has been a little bit higher than Kyle's. So I don't know. But anyway, the point is Kyle was having a good year and is now clearly had an excellent year. I mean, for him to come out and play this well is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, there's a difference between talking about the season and talking about the overall level of play. Ricky Wysocki put out his list, top 10 list of players right now in the world. Okay, you ready for it?
Yep, hit me.
Number 1, Calvin Heimberg. Number 2, Isaac Robinson. Number 3, Eagle McMahon. Number 4, himself. Number 5, Gannon Burr. I am going to help Ricky out because he accidentally omitted Simon. Okay, so I'm going to put him into the list where he should have been, according to what Rick said, which was 5th or 6th. So I'm putting him at 6th. Simon at 6th, Matteo at 7th, Kyle Klein at 8, Bradley Williams 9, and Paul Macbeth 10. He had Aaron Gossage as his 10th with the Simon list.
Bump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think of Simon's rankings?
Ricky's rankings.
Thank you. Simon on the brain.
Yeah, no, you're good. My initial reaction is that it's disrespectful to Kyle Klein to put Matty O above him when he just won USDGC. I think that is disrespectful. I
don't know if it's disrespectful to be one spot lower than somebody else in a list like this.
Yes, it is.
I do agree that I would put Kyle ahead of Matteo.
Yeah. But I think Gannon's too low. I think Gannon deserves more respect. He's got the most wins on the season. He's 3rd in the Pro Tour standings. And I know he just had a not great USDGC, and that's putting it mildly. But I think Gannon's too low, and I probably bump him above Rick. And then I mean it's probably the accurate list from there.
It's pretty solid. Solid.
It is.
4 first-time MPO major winners in our last 5 majors. Of course, we had Corey Ellis and Isaac Robinson back at Champions Cup. This is the first time. Go ahead.
The reason it's not 5 is because Isaac won 2 of them this season, right? Like
he doubled up.
Right.
This is the first time that's happened since 1990. So back in the day, they had fewer majors, obviously.
Right.
So 1986 through 1990, there were 5 brand new first-time winners all at Worlds. Thank you, Statmando, for some of today's stats and info. And now we've done it here in what we can definitely call the modern era, regardless of where you define it. It's the modern era has to be. Here we are.
Right.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to a bigger changeover happening in MPO right now. Because I believe this goes along with this stat very nicely, Josh. This year, neither Ricky nor Macbeth finished in the top 5 at a major. That's the first time that's happened in 12 years. Hasn't happened since 2011. And we've already had the conversation a little bit. It's officially the end of the era, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like this has to be it.
Yeah.
All these new winners, the legends of the last decade, not in the top 5 ever at a major this season. I don't know what more evidence you need to see.
I completely agree with you. And what I want to do an exercise. We polled if you look at the preseason, right? Because right now, I think there's a lot in the air. When you look at Ricky's list, for example, with Isaac in number 2, Gannon in the top 5, arguing where Kyle should be and where his season should be. I think that the discussion around the majors makes the discussion around your top tier of players murkier than ever before. And we've done this before where we make tiers and kind of put players and sort them into it. But I want to take, Charlie, if I were to ask you prior to the season, so preseason, who are your tier 1 guys? What list would you have come up with?
Calvin.
Yep.
Paul, Ricky, Gannon.
Yep.
Eagle.
Yep.
And after last year's season, probably Simon.
Great. Okay. So we take those 6 guys, if we wanted to, and I think this defaults on being a little more inclusionary, right? Making sure that we don't split hairs on any of these guys. So bring all 6 of those guys in. Let's look at their major performances for those 6 guys. And because those are, tier 1, that's who you'd expected at the majors. If I had told you
0 major wins among them all, by the way, first things first.
If I would have told you preseason that there would be 0 major wins from those 6 guys,
I would have needed some fat odds to bet that.
It's crazy. And in fact, here's the other crazy part. 3 podiums.
That's
total.
It?
That's it.
Wow. Eagle had 2 podiums at USDGC and European Open. Simon had USDGC.
That's it.
Yeah. And even average finishes, Gannon averages 13.3. Now that's driven because he took 27th this weekend. He had 2 top 10s at Worlds and Champions Cup. Paul was 13th at Champions Cup, 20th at Worlds, and 75th at the European Open after he DNF'd. Did Paul really finish 20th at Worlds?
Yeah.
That is shocking.
He was still dealing with that injury, remember?
Yeah, I know. It's just
still
wild. After all of those years of finishing first or second. And it's not like these guys were a disaster. There's some top 5s. There's a couple of podiums. But it's surprising when you look at it in aggregate.
Yes,
that they really didn't perform very well.
Ricky didn't play Champions Cup, but he has an average finish of 9.67 and only 1 top 10. European Open is the only event that he got. It was under top 10. And a 6th place drags his other 2 that were 11th and 12th at USDGC and World respectively to a below top 10 finish. But yeah, 1 top 10 finish. You look at Simon. We know of his woes, but honestly, he hasn't been he's right in the middle of this pack when you look at it. He's 13th at Champions Cup, 11th at Worlds, and 3rd at USDGC for a 9th place overall average finish.
Wild. Well, I want to give some shout outs to some folks who got their best ever major finish. Bradley Williams improves from 7th up to 2nd. Joseph Anderson finishing 12th. Sullivan Tipton, what a weekend for him. Yeah. Great story. He finishes 12th. Andrew Marweed, 15th, up 8 spots from his previous best. Evan Smith, 15th. Hjalte Jensen finishes 18th. Tuomas Hutiainen, 18th. Parker Welk, 24th. Ani Rusanen, 24th. So obviously some newer European names to the tour. Not a surprise there. But then some of the kind of like promising middle of the pack guys who have had some moments, you know, Sullivan Tipton, Parker Welk, Evan Smith, Joseph Anderson. And then you got some tour vets like Bradley Williams and Andrew Marweed. So you know what, like a top 20 at USDGC is top 25. Like that's an achievement for a lot of players. And certainly a top 10, you know, guaranteeing yourself a spot in next year's USDGC. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break here. We've got lots more to go. But coming up, we're talking to Holyn Handley, Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Champion. Lots to discuss. Chase card winner for the first time at a major for Throw Pink. We've got to talk more about that too. We'll be back.
At Pound, the quality of our gear runs deeper than the stitching. That's why we make everything right here in the U.S., employing highly skilled, well-paid professionals. From bomb-proof Cordura fabric to YKK zippers and recycled plastics, we source the highest quality U.S. materials to make the most comfortable, durable pack in disc golf. Our lifetime warranty stays with the pack, not the purchaser. So regardless of how you find us, we will be here to make sure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Pound's integrity is held together with more than just thread.
Joining us now on the Upshot is the 2023 Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Champion, Holyn Handley. Coming from the Chase card, Holyn, you put together a magnificent final round, and you go to a playoff, and you beat world number 1, Kristen Tatar. I'm sure it's all still sinking in, but how are you feeling after a couple of days to reflect?
Yeah, no kidding about taking a while to sink in, because I feel like the whole day I didn't feel any different. And then I think yesterday afternoon, like kind of driving to Nevin, getting ready for that practice round, kind of hit me that I was like, yeah, I did that. I did the thing. But yeah, it's been cool, man, to reflect on it and kind of the history, you know, the history making esqueness of it. Because I think that was one of the first times that someone won from the Chase card, and yeah, kind of wild.
Yeah. You know, I want to ask you right off the top, like, do you feel like you just won a major?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because yes, but also no. Because like the tournament is definitely treated like a major. Like we're treated the exact same as the men are. And it did seem a little strange, like when we're doing awards and when we're doing like special autograph signings, and I'm right there with Kyle, and we're doing all the same things. We just won on the same course, same number of rounds, same crowd. We're getting paid out like it's a major, and he's over there writing, you know, one time on his discs. And I'm like, I don't really write that on my disc. That's really weird. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's kind of weird that it's a major for the men and not for us. I get why it's not. Like I understand the history of, you know, U.S. women's and then COVID and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's really weird that it's not technically considered a major.
You know, you mentioned the U.S. women's, and we talked a little bit about that earlier. What do you think Throw Pink should be a major? Should the FPO just have 5 majors? Should it be in place of U.S. women's? What are your thoughts on where Throw Pink should be?
Yeah, so I love U.S. women's, and I think the other, like anyone who's gone to it would agree, it is a really special event, and we need to keep it, because you just don't get the same kind of, like, you don't get a big group of women like that together. If you play our sport, you're probably doing good to have a card in your division, you know, in your local area. And so to be able to come together and have such a large gathering of hundreds of women who play, and like having access to the touring pros in a way that you just don't at other events. Like I've never gotten to talk to so many juniors at any other event. And that's just such a cool experience. And I think we need to keep that. I think maybe on paper, what would make sense is like, let that stay a major for all the other divisions and maybe make it A tier for FPO and then make Throw Pink the major. But that's tough because US Women's did a good job this year of making it have the same major feel that Champions Cup, had. So that's hard because I feel like both of the crews did such a good job of giving it that major feel, but it really does feel like Throw Pink should be a major.
There was a lot of twisting and knots on the broadcast. I can tell you that. It's a weird tournament to talk about when it's not a major, but it has all of the trappings otherwise. All right. Well, let's talk about this weekend overall. I mean, everybody up at the top of the lead card had shot a 10 under or better for going into the final day. And it was going to take a number like that to win this tournament. And it did. It just happened to come from the chase card. What was so locked in for you in that final round? It seemed like, every shot was going in the right direction and all the putts were falling.
Yeah, it was just kind of everything clicking. That's a course where if I'm throwing like decently, I don't even have to be throwing my absolute best, but it just, it's a lot of hyzers and a lot of straight shots. So I feel like it shapes really well for my game if I'm game planning well. And then, the putt was just falling. I think the couple of rounds prior, there had been just a few instances where normally I would make that putt, but I just wasn't getting the pop on it. And then, I wasn't missing anything inside the circle, and I was even making a couple of circle twos. So it was really just everything kind of clicking all at the same time.
When you were game planning going into the final day, who chase card or the lead card is ahead of you. What did you think you needed to do in order to be in contention at the end? Or were you just thinking about trying to get a podium? What was your goal there?
I was kind of thinking podium, just looking at how far back I was. I didn't think the likelihood that all four of the lead card players would all kind of shoot mediocre rounds. Like, I mean, if they all shoot mediocre and I shoot super, super hot, I knew there's a chance, but I didn't think the odds that Kristen, Evelina, Henna, and Ella would all kind of, play mediocre on the same day. I thought those odds were pretty low. So I was thinking more maybe sneak into third or second, even if I'm having a really good day. I knew double digits was possible, and I kind of felt due for a double digit round since like my other 3 days hadn't been like anything really to write home about. They've been solid, but not like crazy. Especially like watching all four of them shoot 10 down. It's like, I know I can shoot 10 down. And then, it just kind of got a little lucky with, having the fire round and then the four of them kind of doing that, actually having that mediocre day. So.
Well, I think I saw it. Maybe you posted on social media that you didn't really check scores until around 17. Maybe while you were waiting for 18. So tell us, when did you decide I should look and see where I'm at and like what I'm going to need to do down the stretch?
Yeah, I didn't check all day because I could tell I was playing really well early on. And I was, probably tempted to check around hole 8 or 9. But I knew like my headspace was really good and I didn't want to like mess with that. I figured if I was going to check scores and I was either going to see I'm playing really well and I'm not in contention despite that, and I was going to be kind of bummed, or I was going to see I am in contention and I was going to be nervous for the remainder of the round. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep cruising. And then as we kind of get closer to coming down the stretch, I could feel kind of the energy shift in the crowd and in the people around me. Like, me and, Missy might do the same thing and they would cheer like a little extra loud for me, which felt a little weird. So I kind of knew something was up. And then by the time I'm going to putt on 17, like I could feel nervous, like I was in contention. So I was like, I already feel the nerves. Like my energy's already changed. I may as well know what the situation was. And so that's when I checked the scores.
Well, and then we have the big backup on 18. So you get a chance to, at that point, watch the lead card play 17. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of know the situation that you're going to have 2 strokes on 18. And I think it's time to talk about what happened on 18. Have you watched the tape since you played?
No, I haven't gone back and watched.
Okay. From the tape, it's I can't necessarily say it's definitive, but it looks pretty clear that the disc never crosses back in bounds. Mm-hmm. What was the conversation? What did you see from the tee, and what was the conversation with your card mates about that first shot and whether you should have to re-tee or take it from the fairway?
Yeah, so what I saw is I knew I pulled it wide, and I saw that it was kind of starting to hook. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I get in front of the trees, I'll probably touch in bounds. At least I might even stay in bounds. And then I see it tickle a branch, and I saw where it hit. And from my vantage point, I thought the spot that it hit on the dirt was in bounds. Like, not by a lot, but I thought that spot was in bounds. And I see it roll out. And so I come off, I let Alexis go and throw her shot. And then there was discussion at the teeing area where I asked Alexis if she thought maybe it touched in. And she seemed pretty confident that she thought it touched in. And then there was conversation as we were walking up. And then the marshal even stopped us and asked both Alexis and Missy directly if they thought I had touched in bounds up there. And so every single time it was asked, everybody said yes. And so we just proceeded from there.
So there was never a thought in your mind that you should throw a provisional?
No, because I thought they would just make me go back. We were going to have the weight anyway. So I didn't really think it was a big deal if they decided that, yeah, you didn't cross in after we went and looked at it. Like, it's not that far to just walk back and go throw another shot.
Did the spotter offer any discussion or perspective for where it landed?
He pieced out. I don't think he had a good eye on it, and he didn't seem to feel very comfortable coming up and interjecting. So he pieced out.
So obviously, you know, it's a nervy situation at that point. You almost go OB on your third shot. Then you do go OB on your fourth shot again. And now you're facing a situation. I guess, what was going through your mind at that point as you stepped up to the green and knew, you know, where the score was at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I needed to make the putt, and honestly, that almost makes that situation easier because there's no like decision really. And I'd been feeling really good about my putt all day, specifically all weekend. I'd been feeling really good about downhill putts. I'd putted from that spot on that green multiple times in practice and even earlier in the tournament. So that was probably like the least nervy shot for me, was actually the putt.
So you go then, you finish, you watch Kristen play 18. Kristen birdies it for the first time at Throw Pink. With the way you played 18, my initial reaction was Kristen's got the momentum going into the playoff. Did you feel that way, or what were your thoughts going into that playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even watch Kristen birdie it because I knew she was going to birdie it. She's just a clutch player, and I knew she was gonna. I didn't know that she had never birdied it before. I just kind of assumed she would. Actually, like, to kind of settle my nerves while we were waiting on hole one, we had to wait for some MPO to finish the hole. I kind of just told myself, like, there's no reason to be nervous. The person who should be nervous is probably Kristen, because she's the one who was on the lead card and she's the one who's world number one. And kind of telling myself that, like, no, I don't need to be nervous. She needs to be nervous really kind of helped me, you know, settle in.
So you both end up outside the circle on circle one. You came very close to knocking down that putt. When you let it go, did you think it was in?
I knew it needed to hook up a little bit, but that's usually how I make those putts, is it kind of pushes to the right side and then hooks up when I'm putting downhill from circle two. So I thought it had a chance. It looked like a 50-50 to me. And then I kind of assumed Kristen was going to make it because, like, again, she's a very clutch player and she kind of does that. So when she missed, I was like, all right, we're still in this. I kind of assumed it was going to take me doing something like banging a circle two putt or doing something kind of big if I was going to win.
Yeah. And then you go to 17. And were you at any point considering trying to get tight to the basket, or was it more just play that forehand hyzer out to the right side? Yeah,
I was trying to get it a little closer than I had during previous rounds, because I wanted it to be a putt that I felt like really confident that I can make. So the goal was to kind of put it about the edge of the circle, because like the one thing I couldn't afford to do is miss. If I miss, then she gets to just lay it up to the fat part of the green and then pitch up and take an easy tap in. So I knew I needed to put it within like a high percentage makeable range, but I didn't need to park it, especially not with how I'd been putting. And then, you know, I loved exactly where I put it. If she put it outside of where I put the disc, there was a good chance she would miss, and then I could decide if I wanted to push or go for it. And then if she puts it inside of where I put it, I can assume she's making that and just run it. And then I think I did put the pressure on a little bit because she tried a little too hard to park it and then ends up cranking it over into the water.
It ends up being, a fantastic performance and an exciting round. You take home a paycheck of $12,500. Mm-hmm. That is the best paycheck that you've made in your career. I can't ask, obviously, or you probably won't share specifics about your contract, but what does that kind of money do for you on tour, and how impactful is that for your kind of salary career considerations?
Yeah, I haven't even thought that far ahead. See, this is why I have an agent, because he thinks about those things. But I mean, yeah, I was already pretty happy with kind of how my earnings were this year. Was not really concerned going into off season, and then having this is just a super nice bonus kind of. And then I think, yeah, it should definitely help the contract negotiations, I think, here in a few weeks.
Well, you also had a bet with Ella. Mm-hmm. Whoever won first got to force the other to dye their hair the color of their choice. So we saw some photos from this all go down on social media. What color did you choose and why? Well, it's the Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championship, so I thought it was obvious we had to go pink. I was kind of thinking pink in my head anyway, but the thing is, she pulls it off. It looks so good. It does look good. It looks really good.
I didn't know this is done already. I'll have to go look at the pictures. I haven't seen
we'll
it yet.
We'll put it in the YouTube version of the show.
Okay.
So, it's a weird tournament to win because it's just an A tier, right? But it doesn't feel like that, and nobody really treats it like that. So, for you to get your first win on tour, but have it not kind of quote unquote be official counting, how do you deal with that? Is that weird?
I mean, it's a little weird, but I don't really care what you call it. I won a tournament with as competitive a field as you're going to get, given who's healthy at the moment. We had to qualify to get there. There was the massive crowd. There was all the media. There's the payout. As far as my sponsors are treating it as though I won a major. So in my mind, it's a tour win, and that's all that really matters.
Absolutely. When you look forward to the Pro Tour Championship, what are some of the things that you're thinking about? Do you like the new format?
I do like the new format because I think people really want to see, the top players play all of the days. And I think a lot of people didn't love watching the quarterfinals or semis because they're not necessarily getting to see their favorite players, and it's kind of confusing. I do like that the scores reset, though. It would have been I don't think it would have been great if we'd had the starting strokes and then that was it all the way until the end. So I do really like the format. I think it'll be really interesting. And seeing as I tend to play worse at the beginning of tournaments, I think this will actually set up for my own tendencies pretty well. And the course is really great for the most part. I think maybe the last two holes, I don't know how those will play out because they're kind of wide open with a lot of OB. But I really like that they got rid of some of kind of the more dinky par threes and stretched some holes out, made some really cool looking par fours. So I think it's going to be overall a really fun tournament.
So you got a practice round in already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you guys saw this on Instagram, but Ella's first practice round with pink hair, she got an ace. So
wow.
Look out. I think the pink hair gives her superpowers, dude. She was throwing so good. I don't remember what whole number it was last year, but it's that one where it's really, really straight and then kind of slowly curves off to the right. And then there's that cliff and there's an elevated pin on it. Now it's hole 11. But she aced that hole, which is one of the coolest holes on the course. And it absolutely insane ace.
That's awesome.
What have you done? You unleashed Superella.
Hey, I already won the bet, so if she wants to win next weekend, I'm good. I just really didn't want to dye my hair.
Getting your first win is always kind of this exhilarating experience. What's the, I'm sure you got floods of text messages and people want your signature on discs, and are you feeling that you've been inundated by lots of praise and whatnot, and frankly controversy because of what happened on 18. Certainly, there's been a lot of discussion about that online. How are you handling all of that?
Honestly, I'm not looking too much at the discussion online because, like, we made the call that we could based on what we saw and based on the rules. There's like no going back and changing it now. So there's really no point in going into that discussion. I think, at least from my point of view, like, we want to have a discussion about officiating and rules and course design and how to like prevent these kind of situations. I think that's a totally separate discussion that the PDGA definitely needs to have. So I'm kind of just avoiding that stuff. I think most people kind of understand that the cart has to make the call based on what we see. We don't get to use video. And I think a lot of it is kind of calmed down. But then, yeah, a lot of praise, a lot of texts, a lot of really supportive messages from people I knew back in California, from people I've known, like I haven't talked to in forever, to like everybody that, you know, there's people on tour texting me, there's family members, friends texting me. So it's been a little overwhelming. I definitely haven't been able to look at like everything. I've been doing good to respond to all the texts. But I think, yeah, overall, it's definitely been a lot of love from people.
You have, I was going to see if I could, I'm not even going to try and count. You have a lot of podiums and a lot of top fives this season. You had a really spectacular season, all things considered. And I think that the perception has been at times that you get in a position where you could win, and then you might have a poor final round, or there might be some holes that kind of prevent you from staying in contention and pulling you out. Or as you say, maybe a bad early round, and then you play better in the final round when it's too late, especially in a 3-round tournament. Do you feel like this win has taken a load off your shoulders and will enable you to maybe close out more events and help you on the mental side of the game?
I hope so. I mean, I'm trying really to draw confidence from this. Me and Tyler were joking that like the first one almost had to come from the chase card, because sometimes when I do, like you said, I get into that final round lead card position and I'll just have a couple little mistakes. I mean, we saw it at like Dynamic Disc Open, an otherwise really, really good tournament. And it was just like a couple little spit outs, which is something so simple. And like even like going back to like Beaver State Fling, like a couple short putts missed and it could have been a totally different day. And then you think of like this last weekend, like I didn't miss my putts. So I really think, I think doing it coming from the chase card and not really feeling that pressure for most of the day, I think helped. And then I'm going to choose to try and draw as much confidence from this, knowing that like if I just put my head down and I work, then that might be enough, and just kind of trusting that.
I want to ask about your putting stroke, because we heard on Tournament Central this weekend that you changed from a nose up to a nose down putt. You ended up finishing 3rd in Circle 1X putting percentage this weekend, 11th in Circle 2. Great numbers. Were you using that new style of putt all this weekend? And do you feel like this is like, wow, I figured it out?
Yeah, I mean, I started this putting change back in Blue Ridge, so like way back. And I don't normally recommend doing any kind of like mechanical change during season, but it was a problem. Because I think back to like Music City, like I was struggling with putting. And then specifically at Blue Ridge, I was just spitting out right side and left side, like an insane amount. I was throwing the disc just fine, but like could not get the disc to stay in the basket because I was missing too much right to left. And so I wanted to change to a style of putt where the miss is high and low rather than right and left. The whole original reason I did the nose up kind of spin putt was because back when I developed that putt, I would have trouble with getting the disc high enough. Like I didn't want to let the disc get too high because I was afraid of missing. And so I would cage putts. And so this style let me just aim at the center of the basket and kind of fire. But that does mean like I would get a lot of right and left splash outs when I did miss. And so I kind of reflected on things. I was like, well, I'm not really scared of missing short anymore. So maybe I can kind of revisit this more like flatter nose down kind of putt, where now I'm aiming at like the little nub atop above the band and trying to let the disc drop in. And so, I mean, I was practicing for hours and hours a day, like as much as I could without, like hurting my elbow or something, from basically that tournament up until, I don't even know, sometime in the Midwest, maybe I kind of chilled out on the putting practice a little bit. But yeah, I've been using that stroke, or trying to use that stroke, since about Blue Ridge.
We've seen, I actually want to ask you a follow-up question with that. We've seen a couple of tournaments where there were some egregious spit outs, and we talk often about some baskets are better quality than others. And I don't think this changes the discussion. Do you feel like spit outs are more a problem with basket type, or do you think that players' putting style makes them more susceptible to spit outs? And where do you think the blame kind of lies with spit outs on tour?
Yeah, I think there are some basket designs that absolutely catch better than others. And I think most players would agree we would love to see standardization. But the reality is that's not what we're doing right now, which means it's on the players to figure out how to make it on every kind of basket. And yeah, after DDO, I did make another kind of little change. Like I used to do a full kind of pre-shot routine before every putt, regardless of what the distance is. And if you'll notice now, if I'm inside of about maybe 13 feet or so, I just focus on my target and putt. I don't do the full swing, because what happens is when I do my full routine, I put a lot of pop on the disc. I give it a lot of pace. And when I'm that close, that's when I get those like on pole spit outs, especially on certain baskets that are kind of more prone to that. So like, as much as I would love to just blame baskets all the time, the reality is, like at DDO, Haley put it on the same baskets and didn't have a single spit out. So I kind of have to take ownership of that and make some changes. And since I made that change, I haven't really had as many spit outs. I've maybe had one or two here and there, but they haven't been as prevalent.
What did you think of Winthrop?
As
a course?
Yeah, Winthrop's interesting. It's so different from anything else we play. Because you don't have the same shot shaping features that you can get on other courses. I almost see it as kind of similar to Emporia. And actually, when I was game planning for DDO, I copied almost shot for shot what Kristen did at Worlds, because I thought she shot two of the best rounds ever on that course. So I kind of looked at how she broke it down. And then I had a similar approach kind of to Winthrop, because what Kristen does so well is she breaks a course down into shots that are really, really easy for her. And that's why, like, even when she's feeling a little nervous, or even if her game's not at 100%, she still scores really well, because she's not trying to do anything that's like mildly difficult. And so I was trying to do the same thing of like, all right, straight shots and hyzers. Let's just try to like put the course to that, like forehand, backhand, hyzers, and straight shots. And if I tried, and so I think that's what I did really well, was like kind of breaking, not trying to like throw it as far as I can, not trying to shape anything crazy, but like, what is the easiest way to get the best score over the entirety of the tournament? And a lot of times that meant not throwing it as far as I could, or maybe putting myself a little bit further back on the fairway, or a little bit further right or left to try and open up angles. So yeah, it's a course that really forces you to think about landing zones, because you get really, really, it's really easy if you stay in the right area, but it's really hard if you don't.
So from a fan vantage point, and, for us in the booth, this was just an incredible event. I mean, we saw so many awesome rounds from the top players. We had more players under par than we've ever seen before here. Did it feel like it was awesome, like while you were playing the tournament? Like, were you getting the sense that like, wow, people are playing really well, this is a super exciting tournament, we feel the pomp and circumstance of being in Rock Hill and all the fans? I'm just curious how it felt for players on the ground, or if it just felt like another event.
Yeah, it definitely felt different from other events. Like the crowd was amazing. There is an interesting stretch of holes though, where like you're along the road, and so you're hearing like construction noises and like sirens. And like at one point we're like, all right, let's count the different like machine sounds that we're hearing in the background. It is really interesting, because like, yes, it's a big prestigious event, and we do a really good job of like making it feel that way, but we're still on a college campus in the middle of a city. And so there's like, yeah, there's some interesting parts. Like last year we had, there was a baseball like game or practice or something happening at the same time. And we had balls literally raining on us while we're trying to tap out on 8. So like, it's a weird juxtaposition at times because, they do a really amazing job with like what we have there at Winthrop to make the event what it is. But like, yeah, it's still like on a college campus in a city. And so there's these just weird distractions that happen.
I want to pivot a little bit to next season. Champions Cup, because of the changes that are going to come to WR Jackson, is going to be happening at the end of the season in early November. What are your thoughts on that? And
I'm so bummed at what happened at WR Jackson. It was such a good layout. Love a good John Houck course. Yeah, I'm a little bummed that it does extend the season because there are some A tiers I like to go home and play. But beyond that, I'm kind of like, the schedule's the schedule. We'll play it.
Do you think it was good for them to drop the silvers?
I do. Because like sometimes silvers are really competitive and really exciting, and sometimes they're just not that competitive and not exciting to watch. I like what they did is because what I was kind of planning to do with my schedule anyway was probably play 1 or 2 fewer events and put breaks, leading up to like the 4-day events. And that's kind of what they did with the schedule anyway. Like I didn't really have to make too many adjustments. I'm pretty much going to play every event as it is. So I actually really like what they did with the schedule.
Yeah, a lot more space out there now. I guess I'm curious for your collected thoughts on the weekend. You played hole 9 fantastically, 7 under through 4 rounds. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could look at. What do you think was the deciding factor for why you ultimately were able to take this tournament down over, the best field of the year in some ways?
Yeah, I think overall this was the best I've planned to play a course. I think I did a good job of kind of learning my lesson from being too aggressive last year. Because even on the days where, my throw felt a little off or my putt was a little off, I didn't have any huge blow up holes. I did take a double on 12 because I missed one of my upshots, but beyond that, I didn't have any, that's what you get. The only way to stay in it at Winthrop is to not blow up. And so, over 4 rounds, I didn't really have a single blow up hole. And I think that came down to better decision making. Obviously, I'm going to look back at the holes where I didn't birdie them any of the rounds and kind of see, what can I do better there. But I think my throws were good enough. And then the putting overall was good enough. There were a couple spots there where I felt like it should have been a little bit better. But yeah, I really think it came down to how I broke the course down.
The scores for FPO, Charlie mentioned it briefly that, there were more women under par than before and probably at any other tournament. The scores were relatively close to the MPO scores, right? Kyle wins with the 27 down. You win with the 23 down. So first question, do you think that the throw pink course is a well-tuned layout for the FPO game? And second, do you think that course design for FPO players should move towards MPO where the scores are lower under par? Or do you think the MPO scores and courses should be moved where it's harder to get birdies and they move closer to FPO?
Yeah, I honestly don't think the absolute score really matters that much. I care more about, do these holes create scoring separation? Is there opportunity to do really well? Is there potential to do really, really poorly? Because that's where you're going to see the best players, kind of rise to the top. That's where you need holes that make it so it's not enough to just be able to throw good shots or to be able to throw really far. You need to golf too. I think the current throw pink layout does that. I think there's some spots where you could potentially make it a little bit harder. I feel like 9 almost needs to be a par 3 at this point. It's 360. Yeah, there's too many twos on it. I think it needs to be a par 3. Yeah, I think overall I'm pretty happy with it. I like that we use hazard in a lot of spots. I think overall on tour we should use hazard more. I think it's great to have the the punishment kind of scale with the shot, right? Like it's a little annoying if you miss your shot by like a foot and if someone misses it by a mile and you're both going to the same drop zone. So I really like the use of hazard. Yeah, overall, I really do like Winthrop. So good course.
Well, Holyn, congratulations once again on the win. And did you any special celebration on Sunday night or yesterday?
I mean, Sunday night we dyed Ella's hair. That was kind of our celebration. Raven Klein actually did it. I just kind of was here. We just used my space, but she did a fantastic job. Ella looks great. But.
Love it. All right. Well, good luck this weekend at the Pro Tour Championship. What's the plan for Nevin? How do you win at Nevin?
Oh man, there's actually a pretty good mix of wooded and open holes. So I think it's going to be, stay in the fairway as much as possible. Take your medicine when you have to. There's going to be a lot of scrambling. Got to make putts. And then once we do get out in the open, I think that's where I'll have a little bit more advantage. So those open holes really try to score and then kind of, keep it together during the tight woods.
All right. Well, good luck and congrats on the win and an excellent 2023 season.
Cool. Thank you.
Holyn Handley with us here on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upshot. Always good to chat with Holyn Handley, who could probably be a commentator someday. I get that. I get the commentator energy. She's got a good voice, analytical about the game, has takes. It's all good stuff, Josh.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it that way, but you're absolutely right. I mean, as soon as we were off the air, I said, I think Holyn is such a great interview to have. It's always great to have her on the show, and she brings, Holyn comes from a competitive athletic background as well, and one of those players who brings the athleticism and the very technical side of disc golf into it. It's why I think she has some of the best instructional videos on YouTube, is because her ability to break down form, technique, and shots is up there with Kristen, and she kind of describes the way Kristen does it as well, and takes that as her model, and it's obviously proven to be successful. Holyn had a great season and a great win this weekend.
She becomes the first chase card winner at a major or throw pink. And all right, we have many topics to touch on. So let's start here.
Okay.
We heard what Holyn had to say about it being weird for it not to be a major. What do you say about this tournament?
I think Holyn was very diplomatic about it, but I completely agree with her sentiment that this should be a major. It feels like a major. It's played on Winthrop. She's sitting there signing discs next to Kyle Klein. I gotta say, I feel like we've been the guys number one beating this drum. You go back to last year or 2 years ago even, and we're like, it's a major. There's memes of us holding the sign that says "Throw Pink" is a major, and I now feel like if it doesn't get made into a PDGA capital M, that it's actively weird and bad. Yes.
It's not just my own hobby horse anymore. It's no, everyone thinks it's weird and bad for it not to be actually a major. So I say they just make 5 FPO majors. I don't hurt U.S. Women's. This doesn't have to be called the U.S. Women's Championship. I don't care about that. But it needs to have the weight match what we call it. And the PGA can make the change tomorrow.
Yep.
And I guess in my mind I was like, nah, we should only have 4. But the LPGA has 5 majors and the PGA Tour only has 4. So let's just do that.
Here's the other thing though about it. Number one, the PDGA is struggling to get bids for majors. We know that that's a fact, right? Getting tournament staff who have experience in locations that work with clubs that have the necessary infrastructure and support. It is a large endeavor, and U.S. Women's is one of the largest endeavors because of the size and the fact that it's a major all the way down the board. We've talked about this in the past. I really agree with Holyn's idea that you make the U.S. Women's an A tier for the FPO and leave it a major for everybody else, but you do so with a commitment from the Pro Tour that they're still going to reserve a spot on the tour for that event, right? Don't schedule something that's over. Put it in the schedule and make it a tour event, and make US Women's kind of the weird one. And it's an A tier, it's a tour event even, but it's not a major, and then make Throw Pink the major instead. It reduces, because, and this is...
How about this? How about make it a DGPT event?
Yeah, great. Make it a DGPT, not elite event. It's just you're right. No. It's a DGPT event.
Well, I guess they don't call it that anymore.
They don't call it elite. It's a tour event now.
No. Every year it's different.
Oh my gosh. But yes, make it an elite series event, whatever they call that now, and give points for it for the FPO, and let them play it and make it a tour stop. But the other part that's really important about that is US Women's was great this year, but we're not that far removed from us saying how, like, that this is the biggest joke of a major because of how poorly it's been run and some of the courses it's been on.
I agree, but I will give the PDGA credit that they have made substantial improvements in terms of the way that they approach preparing for these events, staffing wise, all those things. And I would not expect it to go backsliding to where it was 5 years ago.
And I think that you are right, but anytime it's dependent on a bid process where they don't get a bid or very many bids, I think there is always a risk of that backsliding at no fault of the PDGA.
Yeah, I'm a fence sitter on what to do with US Women's.
Okay.
Because I think everyone can agree that it's a very cool event.
Yes.
And losing the FPO side of that event would make it less cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to figure out a way to preserve that, but maybe it needs to evolve and not be a major. Maybe you keep it as a major. I don't know, but it definitely feels more like Throw Pink has more prestige, weight, intensity, just the energy around it is just way stronger than for US Women's.
Yeah, has to be a major. Whatever you do with US Women's.
I mean, it's comedy hour on the graphics on the broadcast. Major adjacent.
Yeah.
Major like.
Oh my gosh.
Majors and Throw Pink. So yeah. Let's see. Mentioned already, largest payout of Holyn Handley's career, nearly doubling her previous best of $6,500 at Worlds from this year when she finished third. And like Holyn's having an awesome season. Like, I think we can all, obviously, Chris number one.
Yes.
Own number two still. And then Holyn?
I actually
still put Missy above Holyn.
I think that there needs to be a conversation about this of like how you rank who wins the consolation player of the year prize, because to me I don't think it's obvious.
Who is number one on the challenger by committee? Who is the committee chairman?
I don't think it's obvious, because Missy also has an elite plus win, and I think when we get to the off season, we should sit down and give our player, like, do a player of the year conversation, but with just everyone besides Kristen, and see what's their average finishes,
I love it.
Wins, majors.
We got to dig deeper, because they each have one win.
Exactly. And no majors. No majors makes it a little easier to consider.
Yeah, I don't think there's much conversation about who is number one. 3 different winners now in 3 years at Throw Pink: Missy, Katrina, and now Holyn. And Josh, this was just an incredibly entertaining tournament in FPO from start to finish. Round 1 was great. Round 2 was great. Like, scores, hot scores from different players every day. Henna and Evelina shoot awesome in round 1. Evelina sets a course record. Then we see Ella go off. Kristen has a terrible day. Then she comes back and shreds on day 3. And then Holyn off the chase card with the crazy drama of the finish. We go to the playoff. I mean, you cannot ask for more. There was more peak viewership on DGN during the FPO final round than there was during the MPO final round. 9,200 people watching live all at once during FPO, only I think about 8,200 or something like that for MPO. To me, it says it all.
First time that's ever happened.
First time that's ever happened. No surprise there.
No surprise. I completely agree. I think that stat right there shows you what the storyline of this weekend was, and the kind of viewership that FPO pulled shows that. I mean, this was this is a major. This is a major, and it has the pull, it has the weight, it has the impact, and when the golf is this good, because Winthrop brings this kind of golf out, usually asterisk on this year's MPO. I don't know what the heck they were doing. It made for an amazing tournament. I was thinking about it. The only other tournament that I put in conversation for most entertaining tournament of the year would be European Open MPO. But I
feel so privileged as I've been in the booth for both of these tournaments. That was extremely entertaining.
But both of those were incredibly entertaining. But this is up there, and I think it gives European Open a very strong run for its money on the MPO side for the best. And that's and so for anybody, I don't think we hear very many of them, but I know there are still people who don't watch FPO and who only watch MPO, and they're casual MPO fans, and I don't think many of them are listening to this podcast. But FPO is such entertaining and compelling golf, and this weekend just proves that.
Okay, so Kristen, and I'm thinking back through the final round, and there's just Kristen probably should have won. And I don't mean that from the hole 18 controversy. We'll come back to that. Mm-hmm. She just made some really bad decisions on holes 7 and 8 that I can't get out of my mind. So she misses the Mando on hole 7. That wasn't a bad decision. I mean, that is what it is.
It was windy. We saw the way the disc drift a little bit.
I mean, we just watched Holyn 5 minutes prior, though, just absolutely lace a mid-range right to the pin.
You're right.
So it's not like it was impossible. But then the lead card is just totally, it's kryptonite. They half of them, more than half of them missed the Mando. I think all of them missed.
All 4 of them.
Did they all miss the Mando?
They all did.
They all missed the shot, but I think
Ella did not miss the Mando.
Ella just came up short of the Mando and then made par.
The other 3 missed the Mando.
Yeah. And then on the next hole, Kristen trickles out of bounds left. Not a great tee shot, of course. And then next decision, I don't know what she was thinking. She tried to bite off too much. Ends up hitting branches, falling down into the OB again. She ends up taking double bogey. And that, to me, was just such a critical error. And then she goes for it on 9, which I respect, given the circumstances. It makes sense for her to try it that day, but she doesn't make it across, which I just found so strange. I was surprised that she wasn't going for it every day. It really felt to me like that's a distance that she should comfortably be able to throw every time.
I don't know. Yeah.
But she was always playing it conservatively. She goes for it, doesn't make it, drop zone, ends up taking the par, which is essentially a bogey if we reclassify this as a par 3, as it should be. And so that stretch, 7, 8, 9, bogey, double bogey, and then effectively a bogey, just too costly. And she honestly played really good the rest of the tournament. Or the rest of the round, that is. She hits the monster putt on 14, and then, it still looks like Holyn. I have one other decision to complain about, though, from Kristen. Not going for it on 17. I don't understand.
Especially because of how poorly Kristen plays 18. She should not look at that and go, oh, yeah, I can make up 2 strokes on 18.
And you're asking your competitor to have to bogey on a par 5 that is not, it's hard, but it's not Holyn took a bogey going out of bounds twice. Only took bogey.
It's because it's a soft par 5.
It's a soft par 5. So par 5. With Kristen not obviously knowing what was going to happen, I just think it doesn't make any sense for her not to run the putt there and try to cut the stroke down to 1. And I really feel like she could have given it a baby bid at least and not gone out of bounds. I just couldn't believe she laid up.
Well, and Kristen's miss is usually to the right, where I mean, I guess she does occasionally airball it, but typically if she misses it, it's hitting chains right and splashing out to the right.
It's just, she was her putter was hot.
I know.
I felt like she should have gone for it. And if you don't make it, okay, so what?
What I thought was interesting, hole 15, I think it was hole 15. Correct me if I'm wrong. She tries to make that putt, threads it between the trees.
Yep.
It hits the cage, drops low. Is that the point where she like turns around?
Yes.
And
she was super frustrated that she'd done everything but put it into the actual chains.
Never seen, and Juliana said the same thing on the broadcast. Never seen reaction from that out of Kristen. I mean, it was, you could tell like it was just not her day, which was so funny because like you pointed out, except for those 3 holes, she played pretty well and was playing well and was still very much in it. It was weird. It was a weird day.
Oh man, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 18.
Okay.
We heard what Holyn had to say. I wanted to wait to discuss it until we heard what she had to say. I think if anybody expected this to go differently because of the video replay or something, you just don't follow disc golf closely enough to know how this works. Because I think the way that it played out is pretty much how it always plays out, which is that the players usually give each other the benefit of the doubt, number one. And when you can't see, what more is there to do besides say, yeah, I think I landed in, and everybody agrees on the card. It's not like anybody ever said, no, I don't think it was in.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was resolved exactly as it would be resolved in any other situation, period. MPO, FPO. Now, there was some discussion in the Discord about would players have challenged whether she was in had Holyn been playing on the lead card against Kristen. Sure, maybe. But they would be guessing the same way everybody was guessing that it was in. I think you were out. I think I was in. Nobody knows. You can't see. You're 350 feet away, and you can't see the string very well. And we had to go like frame by frame in the video replay to see that she was out by about that much, an inch. It's impossible to expect people to make that call accurately. And unless you want to have either starting to try to add video replay, which I think is not a realistic option right now in disc golf, or you have more spotters than officials who have the power to make binding calls, I don't see how you fix this.
I want to do a fast recap of what our discussion was on the rapid reacts. Number one, our biggest complaint was based on the way we perceived it. There was not much discussion around it, around the matter and whether or not it was in or out. I think the way that the interview made it sound with Nate Perkins right after the round was over was Alexis said she thought it was in. I thought it was in. That's 2. That's enough to be good, right? That's the way Holyn tells this story on the rapid reacts. Or sorry, not on the rapid reacts, on the interview with Nate Perkins. That was our first big complaint, right? That there was not more thorough discussion. The fact that the marshal comes up and pulls Alexis and Missy aside and asks them for their perspective, I think for me is something that shows that this process does have more checks and balances than it looked like from the outside looking in, and is something that is important. The second thing, and this is the one that you highlighted, Charlie, when we talked about the kind of incentive structure around 3 players who are no longer in contention because they're on chase card, and how does that play in? I still think that's a problem that, like you said, maybe wouldn't have been any different, but is an issue that I think if in the case that you have someone in contention, and I don't know how you write this rule, but if you have someone in contention at the end of a tournament that is not on lead card, you probably should assign marshals who have, like you talked about, the power to make binding decisions and to step in and be card mates. And maybe that just like top 3 cards or top 5 cards need a marshal assigned to them in a final round. And they become card mates who are part of the discussion and decision making process.
But they have to be up on the fairway to have any kind of useful ability to do anything.
My point, I'm not even talking specifically about this example. Like, I just think that if you need an objective third party or someone who doesn't like, because the problem is when you have three players who are just out of discussion, you just need a voice to say, hold up though, where do you think it crossed and bound? You think it hit here? Even if the marshal can't have like the perfect view, I'm just saying there should be another card mate who has a more objective or differing incentive.
Sure.
So maybe top 5 cards get a marshal that are card mates.
No, I mean, I think there's ways to do this without expecting that it has to be for everyone all the time.
Correct.
Like, no one cares what happens with flip faults on the 8th card.
Right.
Nobody.
No. The other and the final thing I wanted to say, and I said this on the Rapid Reacts, if you're a football fan, when the Rams beat the Saints in the NFC Championship a few years back, and there was that pass interference that was the no call, where the Rams cornerback lays out the Saints wide receiver before the ball's anywhere near him. This is a sport that is the most profitable sports league in the world that has, and that's not a replayable call, but that has video replay and has more cameras and referees on that game than it probably in the entire season of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and they still miss egregious calls like that in the biggest moments. Welcome to sports. It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. It doesn't matter who makes the calls. There's going to be call controversies.
Always.
And this was not even, nobody would even be talking about this had it not been decisive at the end of the final round. And right. You know, I guess you could make the same claim about bad calls at the end of a blowout football game. But I just think like it's easy to get yourself worked up into some like hypothetical universe where, well, Kristen definitely would have won if that had been ruled OB and she had to re-tee. I don't necessarily think that's even true. No. I mean, she went OB again and then, you know, takes the bogey. I think Kristen had the opportunity to run it on 17. I think Kristen had the opportunity to win it in the playoff. I think Kristen had the opportunity to not make the mistakes on 7, 8, and 9. I think there's a million other things that you can look at, and you cannot sit here and tell me that an impossible to judge disc landing on the ground less than an inch away from the line 300 feet away from you is somehow supposed to have been resolved differently. It's not possible.
Agreed.
It's just not possible. So, you know, it's not like Holyn's shot was like 8 feet wide of ever being in bounds and she took it, or that like there was a spotter there who was like, it definitely didn't land in. It was never in. None of that happened, right? There's not
that has happened.
They weren't overruling the spotter that everybody thought it was in.
Yes.
And if you want to say, well, but Alexis and Missy are her teammates on Discraft, it's like, okay, well, then we have to talk about how we want to change the structure of decision making on calls. Last thing before we get to Purse Watch, Ellie Mittling, maybe the story of the weekend in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it had been a Kristen victory, we wouldn't even really be talking about it. We would be just like, Ellie Mittling, oh my God, incredible power. She eagles 18. So does Ella, by the way. She goes over the water in 2. She just shows off it's like seeing the future of FPO.
She has the skill set to be a once in a generation player. She putts great. She can throw a mile. She plays like she's 16. She tries too hard on everything. And that but this is her 10th FPO stroke play event of her career. She hasn't even played a DGPT Elite event yet. She is going to be the future of disc golf.
Wild stuff. All right, let's get to Purse Watch. We're going to talk more USDGC and Throw Pink on our show, which is coming out tomorrow, Wednesday, because the DGPT Championship begins on Thursday. So if you have questions or thoughts, hit us up. Get them in quick, upshot@ultiworld.com, and we might address them on tomorrow's show. Purse Watch, Josh, take us through it.
Yeah, over on USDGC, they have a purse of $125,000. Really good purse, especially considering, and this they are broken out separately. So you have the $125,000 purse, you have $84,125 of added cash. That is the most added cash number that we know about this, except for Worlds this season. That gives a winner payout for Kyle Klein of $30,000 and is a almost 25%, 24% increase from last season. The Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championship, a purse of $48,351 and a winning payout of $12,500. That is a 36% increase from last season.
Yeah, and if you look at it as a combined, it comes up just shy of $175,000, which makes it easily the second highest paying tournament behind Worlds. And then, of course, I guess we should say third with this weekend's Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship coming in at over $300,000. Yeah. So I got to give credit to the USDGC and Throw Pink for really pushing the purse up over the last couple of years. To see numbers at this level being pushed up by 25 to 35%, like that's not happening at other events on tour, really. So
we should also, great stuff. We should also do our Hole 18 review.
Hole 18 review. Oh my gosh.
One of the ones of the year.
10 out of 10, baby. This is one of my all-time favorite Hole 18s. I think this year it really gets its due. 17, like it did
kind of flat. I mean, the playoff.
I mean, yeah,
it really did in the playoff.
It just players. Well, so much depends on the wind. When the wind is blowing left to right, like it was this weekend, you just throw a sidearm out there on hyzer and let the wind push it down into the fat part of the green. And basically, players have just stopped playing it for birdie. Yeah. Because of how tight the basket is to the OB. I don't blame them. How are you supposed to land on the left side and have like circle one birdie putts? It's not like nobody did that, but it just, people have decided I would rather just get my 3 than risk a 7. And, again, the wind matters so much here, but it just didn't feel like it had the same kind of drama and teeth that it's had in the past.
It's so funny that it was the deciding playoff hole, and that's what we're saying. I agree with that sentiment, right? I didn't see the same level, but I still think it's a perfect placeholder for close tournaments, though. I mean, we saw it in the playoff, and I think it'll continue to happen in the future where you're going to see players who need strokes try and push it, and it'll either...
That's basically what happened to Kristen. I'm not trying to say it's not a great hole. What I am saying is that 18 is in the spotlight, and I'm glad because I think it's the best hole on the course.
I've got a take for you, Charlie. I think that the FPO hole 18 is better than the MPO because it has eagle opportunity, but you still see plenty of players who are even at the top bogeying. And yes, it's maybe a little soft as a 5, but it's very clear that birdie is not obvious. It's not a give me. It's not guaranteed. I love that there's eagle potential. I love that a birdie is hard to earn and that big numbers are still possible. I love the hole 18 for FPO. I think it's excellent.
Check out the hole 18 scoring spread from USDGC in the final round. 32% birdie, 21% par, 21% bogey, 16% double bogey, 11% triple or worse. That is dream numbers.
Chef kiss.
Chef kiss. Still a third of players getting birdie, but like you can get crushed.
Let me give you FPO.
Okay.
You had what's the percentage? It doesn't show the percentage for eagle. It's probably 1 or 2%, right? So you have 3%. One player gets eagle in the final round. 35% are getting birdie. 20% got par. 25% got bogey. And 18% got bogey or got worse than a bogey.
Wow. Incredible. That is incredible.
Great scoring spread.
It's just a great hole. I love the hole.
Is.
The only thing that makes the hole need maybe tweaking in the future is that the green is just really not very good for like in-person spectating.
Yep.
But you can kind of tuck back in there. I don't know. It's an awesome hole. It's just...
It is.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. That is going to do it for this edition of The Upshot. More to come on tomorrow's show. as we continue to break down more of the USDGC and Throw Pink. And we'll get you ready for the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship as well. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you tomorrow right here on The Upshot.